Chapter 1. All showroom, no warehouse. Plano, Texas, and my father went together like brisket and ribs. In 1989, when our story begins, not only did our family live in Plano, I was a year old, but both the city and my father were on the rise. During the 1980s alone, the population of the once sleepy Dallas suburb doubled, as big companies such as J.C. Penney and Frito-Lay plunked down their corporate headquarters there. People dressed for success, my father among them. This, after all, was North Dallas. If cops were patrolling neighborhoods, it wasn't to quell drug deals, but to issue warnings to rogue sprinkler users during droughts. Blink, and you'd miss a couple of new housing developments pop up. Long an opportunist, Dad had bagged his job as an insurance underwriter to sell something he realized every one of these new houses needed: security systems. His father, Reuben, had started the business in San Antonio. Though Dad was only in his mid-20s, his Dallas branch of the business went crazy. Soon he was on his way to becoming a millionaire, and becoming a workaholic in the process. Dad and my mother Laura drove a BMW. For her birthday, he bought her a diamond and gold watch, later surprising her with a mink coat. Having a baby son, me, didn't slow Mom and Dad down a bit. I'd been to Europe before I was potty trained. Mom and Dad were a great-looking couple. My dad was lanky, 6'1", and deeply tanned. Mom had strawberry red hair and shy Southern charm. We looked like we walked straight out of a magazine, my father wrote. They attended a large evangelical church, membership was climbing toward 10,000, whose pastor leaned toward preaching a prosperity gospel. If you're faithful, God will bless you. If many who attended Prestonwood Baptist were sincere and committed in their faith, my father was not among them. He was attracted to the church because it was a who's who of North Dallas business: wealthy bankers, big-time developers, oil people, and the like. He began to climb the ranks of the lay leaders. He sang solos during Sunday worship services. Got on the deacon board at age 26. He was one of the youngest ever. He even taught a Bible class, his lack of spiritual depth masked by his abundance of charisma. You've heard of people who can own the room? Dad owned every room he stepped foot in. He was part salesman, part baby-kissing politician, and part verbose pastor. All of this at a church that, given my father's go-go-go lifestyle at the time, was a perfect fit. It was among the fastest-growing churches in America. Prestonwood was a larger-than-life place, he said of the 4,000-seat church, and I deftly positioned myself in its center. Looking back, my father had emerged as an individual microcosm of Plano, full of unabashed pride, unchecked growth, and unlimited potential. But he was so miserable he would stay up nights in anguish. Deep in his soul, he knew he was living a lie. It was a facade, he wrote. I worked long hours, day and night. Friendships were all about comparing what we had with others and affirming each other's material possessions. On the outside, we were beautiful people living in a beautiful place doing beautiful things, but inside, the pit opened wide, and it was asking more and more of my soul. At age 28, just a year older than I am now, he looked in the mirror and didn't see Mike Fechner. He saw the rich young ruler Jesus had admonished to sell all he had, give to the poor, and follow me. Or the prodigal son who had turned his back on God's ways. Or the one he identified with most, Jacob, who was known for his deception. I was a deceiver, he wrote. All showroom, no warehouse. For a 2-week period, unable to sleep, he stayed up long after my mom had gone to bed, weeping in misery. God, he prayed, I don't really know you. I'm so far away I can't overcome these lies. Help me, please help me. That's the first lesson my father learned. That God listens. That God cares about us. That God answers our prayers, though not necessarily how we might envision Him doing so. My dad was about to undergo a radical life change whose catalyst was a woman who couldn't be more different from him. Not that digging out of this dark hole of deceit would be easy. After all, he had been digging that hole since roughly the day he was born. Chapter 2. Cooking the Books. At age 5, my dad and his twin brother Mel were sifting through a garbage dumpster on the military post in Virginia where their father, my grandfather, was a colonel. They found a bag of individually wrapped candy. Uncle Mel wanted to eat it. Dad wanted to sell it. "My brother and I are selling candy," he told the person at the first house they went to. "All proceeds will go toward planting flowers in the neighborhood." Ka-ching. An easy 50 cents. The person behind the next doorbell went down just as easy, and on and on. Mel didn't like the duplicity. What flowers? But went along with the ploy. When Reuben, their older brother, heard of the plan, he demanded a third of the take, or he'd talk. Extortion at an early age. My dad refused. Reuben squealed. Mel and Dad were forced to retrace their steps and apologize to all they had duped. But here's how hardened my dad's heart was at that tender age. "There was no contriteness in my heart. No sorrow for my lies," he wrote. "Only a strengthened resolve not to get caught next time." His thirst for getting rich was triggered by a desire to be like his granddad, a confident, successful doctor who always carried around rolls of bills. It was never about what the money could buy. All he ever wanted was a roll-top desk. A strange desire for a little boy, yes, but as you'll come to find out, Dad was anything but conventional. You see, the money was about how it would make him look and feel. Important, cool, successful. From the beginning, image was everything. A year before my dad's father shipped out to Vietnam in 1968, the family was stationed in Virginia and went to a church where the pastor genuinely cared about the spiritual lives of the kids in the congregation. One night, after hearing the pastor speak on John 3:16, my father came home with a heavy heart. "I already knew I was a manipulator," he wrote. "Lying came easy. If Jesus came back that night, I knew I wasn't saved, and that thought scared the life out of me." He raced into the family room where his parents were watching TV. "I need to know Jesus," he said in a small voice. They explained how that was possible. The next day, he and his brother Mel prayed to be forgiven and to welcome Christ into their lives. But not surprisingly, his faith didn't grow much deeper. In Sunday school, kids were given an array of pins as rewards for attendance, memorizing verses and the like. My dad's shirts soon were as well decorated as a 5-star general. But he was just like the young man he would grow up to be. "I was," he said, "a pretender." As he got older, what continued to sink his integrity was greed. He and his brothers were to keep track of the money they made from doing chores and tithe 10% at church. "But I hated the idea of tithing," he wrote. "It was my money, not God's." At 10, he was cooking the books like a tax cheater, underreporting his income so he could justify paying less of a tithe. With his dad away in Vietnam and the family having moved to Texas, he was allowed to play bingo at Fort Worth's Colonial Country Club, where his granddad was a member. As his blotted numbers started to line up in his favor, his heart pounded with anticipation. "Bingo!" he yelled. He had won a $200 jackpot. But when his mother made him split it with brothers Mel and Reuben, he fumed. His grandparents, not churchgoers at the time, would host huge poker games, and my dad was allowed to play. When a great-uncle offered him pointers, he listened with the intensity of an attendee at a get-rich-quick seminar in a Hilton ballroom. And it paid off. He walked off with a handful of cash one evening. "This is it," he remembered thinking. "This is what I want in life, and more."